So, hayo Yanda. In our last session, that is yesterday, we managed to look at a few things, and one of it was about the user, although I don't want us to concentrate much on the user today. This was about the way. So if the purpose of seeing how the user is being created and how the system looks like. But we talked about the segment.
Hi, Sosmas.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can't see anything on my screen.
Oh, sorry for that.
Sorry.
What about now?
Yes, I can see the screen now.
Perfect. So what I was saying is that we managed to look at a few things, including how we ended up coming up with the chart of accounts. And I wanted to go back to a few points that I wanted us to note in regard to segments and segment values. And when we talk about segments, it is important to know, like, segments. And when we are creating segments, yeah, I used an example of 4 of them. Okay. We have companies, we have departments, we have accounts and projects. It is very, very much important to understand in the system, you can create to a maximum of 30 segments. Okay. You can create to a maximum of 30 segments and a minimum of 2 segments. With this minimum, you can be able to create chart of account. With the maximum of 30, you can be able to create chart of account, but it's not advisable. It's not best practice. So what happens is that you may have, for instance, something like companies. Create company. You have cost center. You may have something like project center stroke department. You may have project, you may have line of business. And you may have something like maybe information here, this region, top of centers. So in this, we have like 6 segments. Okay, you can go ahead and have one we call future one, and future 2. So these are 8 segments. For the best practice, you are not supposed to create more than 9 segments. Or you can create, but it's not advisable to create more than 9 segments. This is because it may influence or it may affect the system performance. So when you are taking requirement from a client, it is very much advisable to get to understand the nature of operation and the need of reporting. Because what happens is there are some information when we are creating or we are defining or we are, coming up or designing the chart of account. You have to understand why do we have company, why do we have region, why do we have cost center and accounts and the rest. So understanding this and why the company or the business or client requires them will help you to advise the business. No, you don't need all this. Probably you might find they have, for instance, let's say company. Then department. Accounts. And they have supplier line. They have they want to maintain something like production unit. And in the production there is project. Then there is future 1 and future 2. So how many are these? There are 11. So as a consultant, you're supposed to sit with business and advise them on how they may need to reduce this chart of accounts or these segments to be not more than 9. Okay. So for instance, you may find you need to understand why does the business needs to maintain or to track the employee information in this level. Whereas we have HRMS, where we maintain employee data. This one will be able to understand it when we look at the multi-org structure. We'll explain more on the structure and how the information is mapped by each and every level of the structure. So once you understand the multi-org structure and you understand the need of client, why they are maintaining the information of employee here, you may come up with a conclusion whether it's required or whether they can continue tracking the information on the in the HRMS level. So it's very, very much important to understand you can have a maximum of 30. There's no limit when it comes to, okay, the limit is 30 and you have a minimum of 2. For best practice, you have a minimum of 2. So those 2, it's upon you to advise the business which 2 segments to use. But there is something I want to discuss more where we will be able to get the answer of the minimum you can use. But rarely you might find we need or we are using 2 segments to create a chart of account. Rarely. So mostly you'll find maybe a minimum of 5. Those are the kind of projects that we have been able to do. But it's very rare to find an implementation where only 2 segments are being used. So for the best practice, remember to tell, like, you don't need to create more than 9 segments when it comes to implementation. This will impact the system performance, and also it may put a huge line of tracking that may not be very relevant when it comes to business reporting. So it's very much important you understand this. It's very much important to understand this and be able to advise, and also when you are doing your practice, be able to know the kind of, be creative to come up with this kind of structures. Okay, we will discuss more on this when it comes to the creation of segments and segment values. But for now, let me talk about something we call qualifiers. Okay, we have 2 categories of qualifiers, and we have Flexfield qualifier. Is there any question on the segment numbers, maximum and minimum? Anyone who would like to have some clarity on this? This could be company B. Anyone who needs some clarity on this? This one is in relation to these segments. It is very, very important. You don't just create them because you have an option to create. There is some guidelines that you have to follow and some standard you have to practice so that you can be giving best practices. So if there's no question, let me continue with qualifiers. So we have 2 types of qualifiers, or 2 categories. Category of qualifiers, and one is Flexfield qualifiers, one are called segment qualifier. These qualifiers are different and they apply on different areas. For Flexfield qualifiers, this one we usually say, or we usually assign them assign to we assign them to segments. We have talked about segments here up. Okay. So qualifiers are, before I talk about, let me provide the information for where we assign this. For segment qualifier, we assign them to segment values. Just a minute. We assign them to segment values. So remember here up, for us to be able to come up with chart of account, we have to have the access to the general ledger responsibility through the key accounting key Flexfield feature. We can be able to define the organization structure or structure name, the segments and segments values. But for these segments to have the nature of the segment that we want to create, we have to qualify them, or we have to give them some characters, or to give them some, effects that will bring difference between, like, for instance, company segment and department segment. The same case, account segment and department segment. So for us to be able to achieve that and make sure that account segment has the qualities of an account, and also the department has qualities of the department or cost centers, the same case with companies, we have to use these feature that we call qualifiers. So qualifiers are kind of differentiator. They give the difference between one segment and the other. So the moment you assign a qualifier, or for instance Flexfield qualifier, to a certain segment, it takes the characteristics of that qualifier and it makes it unique by its own. So with that, and it is very much important to note that under Flexfield qualifiers, we have 6 of them. Okay, there are 6 in number. And segment qualifier, we have 5 of them. We have 5 of them. So all this apply and give the segment values different, characteristics. The same case for the segment qualifier, they give the segment values different characteristics. I hope the difference is clear. So what are these Flexfield qualifiers? Let me copy this. So the first one is balancing segment Flexfield qualifiers. The second one is cost center. Okay. That one is natural center. management. Management. We have intercompany. Segment. Flexfield. The sixth one is secondary trunking. Segment. Flexfield. Qualify. Are they six? Yes, they are. So these are the 6 Flexfield qualifiers. These ones we assign them to segments. And once we assign them to segments, the ones that we are creating or defining, they provide some quality or they give some kind of characteristics to that segment so that it can be able to behave, for instance, like a company. And for instance, it can be able to behave like a cost center and an account and the rest. So minimally, you may find we may be working with the first three, that is balancing segment Flexfield qualifier, cost centers, and natural account for our learning and for our purpose of practicing. These other, you may find they apply to different scenarios when it comes, for instance, if there is companies, for instance, for the company, segment Flexfield qualifier. If there are more than one company and the business wants to have some kind of interaction and management of one company and the other because they relate, this information or these segments, Flexfield qualifier will be used. In our case, I want us to first of all pay attention to the first three, that is balancing segment Flexfield qualifier, cost center segment Flexfield qualifier, and natural account segment Flexfield qualifier. Those three will give you the good foundation to be able to understand the other three. Then the same, we have segment qualifiers. Let me copy this. Okay. And adjust the name. So the number here is there, 5. So what are they? We have allow posting. We have allow budgeting. We have account type. Account type. We have third party control account. And reconcile. These, we have said we assign them to segment values. Okay. Once we send them to segment values, this one we send them to segments. Okay, that's fine. Use my set sign.
Hi, Sosmas.
Hi.
We can't see anything on the screen anymore.
Oops, sorry for that. Let me stop sharing and share.
Okay.
What about now?
Yes. Can see now. Thank you.
Right. So we are talking about Flexfield qualifiers and segment qualifiers. So, and what I'm saying is, for Flexfield qualifiers, we assign them to segments, and for segment qualifier, we use them under segment values, or we assign them to segment values. So for instance, what I mean is that if we happen to say balancing segment Flexfield qualifier, this one, we assign it to company. Okay. For cost centers segment Flexfield qualifier, we assign it to departments, and stroke cost centers, stroke branches. You find others are called subunits. You know, you can name them as much as they may come up. Okay. And for natural account, we assign it to accounts, account segment. And this one I can say company segment. So the moment you assign balancing segment to the company segment will take the characteristics of the balancing segment Flexfield qualifier. The moment you assign cost center to the departments or cost center or branch or subunit segment, it will take the characteristic of the cost centers segment Flexfield qualifier. Again, when you provide or you create or you assign the natural account segment Flexfield qualifier to account segment, it will take the characteristics of the natural account. For instance, if I assign cost center to the accounting or account segment, which characteristics will it take? I'm asking this as a question.
Could you come up again?
I have explained we usually assign the balancing segment Flexfield qualifier to company segment, cost center segment Flexfield qualifier to departments, natural account segment Flexfield qualifier to account segment. Because we want to, or we work with the characteristics that they have under these segments. So my question was, if I happen to assign cost center to account segment, what characteristics will the account segment have?
It will bear the characteristics of a cost center Flexfield, because that's what defines the characteristics for the segment.
Correct. If you happen to be asked, what is the balancing segment for a certain company? Like, for instance, you may be asked, like, the company segment has been assigned the balancing segment Flexfield qualifier. What is the balancing segment for that company? Is that question clear? Or rather, the point is, if you happen to assign account segment, this one, the balancing segment Flexfield qualifier, it means the balancing segment for that company will be their account segment. So you can say the balancing segment for that company is the segment that to which balancing segment Flexfield qualifier has been assigned. Am I making it clear? If you happen to assign balancing segment Flexfield qualifier to the company segment becomes the balancing segment Flexfield qualifier, or it becomes the balancing segment for that organization. So you can say, what is the balancing segment for that, for the three of them? Let's use the three of them. You can answer that question like, to which balancing segment Flexfield is assigned to? That is the company, or that is the balancing segment. So the balancing segment can be only be referred to as a balancing segment if it has been assigned balancing segment Flexfield qualifier. A natural account segment can only be a natural account segment if it has natural account segment Flexfield qualifier assigned to it. Are we together on that?
Yes, I think I've got you. Let me ask a question. Now, as a company normally, by default, the company becomes a balancing segment when you assign the balancing Flexfield qualifier. In an instance where we are dealing with just one company, leave alone on yesterday illustration when you are saying this is a KCB group where it has different companies. If we are dealing now, let's say this is only KCB Bank. So will it the company still be used as a balancing segment, or we can drill down now to next point of using the cost center being the balancing segment, or that will, because we also have the cost, the next point of cost center segment. So those are conflict, or would it be fine?
Yeah, we cannot skip to use the balancing segment because the characteristic that the balancing segment Flexfield qualifier gives, you cannot overlook them simply because you have, for instance, you are talking about maybe we don't have these other line of businesses. For instance, you say here is only banking. Okay. So for this banking to have the qualities of a company segment, or for balancing segment, we have to provide or to assign the balancing segment qualifier to this segment of account. And once we assign it to it, we can go ahead and create now a company under it. And a company will create it as a segment value. So we are discussing about segments, this level, okay? We are discussing about this level. And on this level, that's where we are assigning these different Flexfield qualifiers. So the moment we provide those, we assign those qualifiers to this level of segment, we give the segment the qualities of the qualifier that we have assigned to. So we cannot overlook the balancing segment qualifier simply because you only have one line of business. We cannot overlook balancing segment Flexfield qualifier and go straight to the natural account segment qualifier. Remember, this is an account. I've said mostly, or not even mostly, we usually assign it to account segment because it will give the account segment the characteristics of natural account segment Flexfield qualifier. But the moment you say, or we assume like we can go direct to natural account, does it mean we will not have the level of company? So even if the company is one, we have to maintain the balancing segment qualifier because it will give us the characteristics of reporting. When it comes to balancing, the characteristics that it gives is that of the structure of reporting. And that's why you find it's being called balancing, because all the other segments will end up falling under the company or any other segment that has been assigned the balancing segment Flexfield qualifier. Is it clear?
Thank you. It's much very clear.
Okay. Any other question?
Hi, Sosmas, I have a question. Is it compulsory to have segments that meet the characteristics of all the Flexfield qualifiers, of all 6 of them?
Come up again. Is it compulsory?
Yes, is it compulsory to have segments that meet all of the characteristics of the Flexfield qualifiers?
No, it's not compulsory. It's not
Okay.
compulsory because I've said there's somewhere I mentioned about minimum 2. With a minimum
Maximum,
of 2
yeah.
segments, you can be able to create a chart of account. So with these 2 minimum,
Okay.
it means you can only assign 2 Flexfield qualifiers. okay? And mostly you might find it's maybe company and account. Assuming that the company is very small, it doesn't maybe need departments. So you find it has maybe 2 employees. So that company doesn't need to track anything under departments. It's only need to go straight to the accounts. So you find like, okay, it's a very rare case, that's what I said. A very rare case, but it is possible, or rather it's not mandatory or compulsory to have a chart of accounts that has all the Flexfield qualifiers. So at the end of the day, you'll find you are working with mostly minimum of 3, because you'll find in most cases there must be a company, and a company has department, and those department has accounts. So those accounts will be tracked under the departments and also through departments under the company. So it's not compulsory.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Any other question on that? The chart of account is very important because this is what will help you to be able to know how you will be mapping, or how you will be defining or designing the system each and every time you are with a client or you have a new project. So it's very, very much to think any kind of question that you can come up with, try to broaden your imagination, and this will help you, because unless we have this, we cannot be able to go ahead and do any type of implementation. So it's very, very much important to be able to tell whether you can be able to come up with different, nature of chart of accounts. There are situations whereby you might find we create more than one chart of accounts based on the nature of requirements. But this one is more tricky when it comes to the information that we have gathered from the client. So what I would suggest, we'll go deeper in this in another level. But in today's session, I would like you to have a broad picture when it comes to how we come up with the chart of accounts and how we might end up, giving the chart of accounts certain characteristics simply because of how we want them to behave. So when we are talking about segment qualifiers, these ones, we will discuss more about them in time of implementation. But mostly you'll find they give an account. For instance, when we are creating segment values, mostly we will use them under the account segment. Okay, so under the account segment, that's where we will say, mostly we usually select either it's yes or no. So already these one are there, even these one are there in the system. These are seeded. Also these one are seeded. So what we only do is to select, we only select the kind of whether we are allowing or not. So we usually say either yes or no. And this one, it is a form of control when it comes to what the kind of data you want the user to key in the system. Also, for instance, if you allow posting, when you talk about posting, it's posting in the GL. For instance, we usually come up with this account. This account, we come up with them in GL. And I talked about once we do the transaction in the subledger, we have to send that information to the general ledger application for report purposes. So the moment we allow posting, it means we can update the information or the data of that account if we select yes. If you select no, it means it will not be able to be updated when we are posting or updating the information or the data that is coming from the subledger accounts. The same case applies to allow budgeting. This is for the purpose of, you can use that account for budget purposes. Okay, you can create this account and give it or allow it to be used for budget purposes. When we come to a natural account, when you talk about natural account, I mean account type, mostly you'll find we use this to give the characteristics of the account that we are creating. We have 5 natural accounts. Do you know them? Do you know the 5 natural accounts? Can someone name them for me?
I think asset account, expense account, income account, equity and liability account.
Yeah, revenue is what you are referring to as income. You have mentioned equity and liability. So there are 5 of them. Okay. There are 5 of them. When we are creating these assets, or we are creating this account, sorry, you have to choose whether the account is an asset account, whether it's an expense account, whether it's a revenue account, equity, or liability. Equity, we also call it retained earnings. Okay. So this is where you give that account that characteristic, so that the moment now we go ahead and now use the accounting methods, the system will be able to tell this account being an asset account, being an expense, how do we treat them? We look at the entry, the accounting entries when we start doing transactions, so that we can understand more. But it's very good to understand on this kind of point, because this is what we'll be using. The moment we are creating an account, we have to tell whether it's an asset or an expense account, revenue account, equity or stroke retained earning, or liability. So for the third party control account, that one I will be able to explain when we start implementing about that parties. Then you can be able to tell whether that account can be used, needs to be used for reconciliation or not. So even this one is either yes or no. Okay. Any question? So the navigation to be able to reach to all this, apart from this segment values, apart from this, the navigation for about accounting in Flexfield. And under accounting key Flexfield, above it we have the general ledger, responsibility. So under these, that's where we'll come and be able to build our segments or create our segments. But before segment, we have organization, structure. And under organization structure, that's where we can be able to define segments. We can be able to define segments, segment values. So what is there? What is the navigation? I want us to write down the navigation. I think it's supposed to be here. Supposed to be here. So we have said that once we log in, we need to go to the general ledger, responsibility. I'm just showing the navigation, but from tomorrow we'll start now building, and we will start with building the responsibilities we create the user, we be able to assign user responsibilities, and now we will working with our own responsibilities. We will not be working with responsibilities that we have here. We'll be working with our own responsibilities. So where is the general ledger? General ledger, super user. I'll go to setup, financials, and go to financials, Flexfield. Then key, then segments. We start with segments, then we go to segment values. We finalize with segment values. So these values is what we refer to as segment values. So we click on segments to open the Java forms. Yanda, you're still not seeing. Yanda?
Yes.
Dennis, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I'm able to see now. Thank you.
Yes, now. I think it was a dark screen short moment ago, but it's fine now.
So this is where we define the segment, but we start with the organization structure name. So what happens is you have to provide the application name first. You can see this window is being called key Flexfield segments, and that's where we are calling it this is the feature that we are using. We are saying we use it to be able to define the segment, and for the segment we have to define the organization structure. Let me show that. This is the accounting key Flexfield. That's what we are saying is key Flexfield window. Then after that, we can be able to define the organization structure. Then we define segment and also go now to segment values. But now, in our today's picture, I just wanted to bring it home for you to understand what we will be doing. So we'll start building from tomorrow. And in today's, I can only just maybe show you once we land in this kind of window. Again, allow me to close this. I want us to navigate now after we have opened the navigator on Java Forms. The system is a bit slow. So we have said the navigation is set up. Okay. Setup, financials. And expand that submenu. Flexfields. Navigation is important, remember. Key. Segments. That is the navigation. Very important for your memory and for your navigation as well. As you click on open, it will open the key Flexfield window. Yeah, key Flexfield segment window. Here, for you to be able to define the organization structure under the general ledger responsibility, or in bracket application. That's why you have the name application here. You are supposed to see the cursor is blinking at the application field. You're supposed to come and search. Click on the find icon. Here you can see we have the application and the title. We have the application and the title. Search for general ledger or general percentage. Then you press on find. I think I got disconnected from my end. You can as well search. Always you can search in the navigator. Setup. Financials. Flexfields. Key. Segments. So I was explaining on how you're supposed to search for the application. And here you search for general the system will give you more than one general ledger application, but the titles are different. Okay, the titles are different. So which title are you supposed to select? Accounting Flexfield. That's where we have this name featuring here. Accounting key Flexfield. Okay, this key is the same key that we have been mentioning. This one, you see, it's flowing in each and every window. But now you have to specify it's the accounting key Flexfield. That's where we map our structure name. So you select the first one, which is general ledger as the application, and the title is accounting Flexfield. So if you happen to select it, you'll find we have so many accounting Flexfield. I mean, so many structure names, sorry. So all these are for data that probably was, placed there by oracles, others for the purpose of learning. There are some people who have been practicing and creating them. So this is the structure name. This is the structure name, the structure title, and probably the description. So the moment you create this name here, you will be achieving the organization structure definition. You define the organization structure name. This is what we are calling here as the, so you see we have the name structures here. So the reason why we give it the structure name is because we use the name of the organization, but it is the parent for now building anything else that will come under that chart of account. So after that, after this one has opened, if for instance we want to create a structure name, you come here and say add one or new. You press the icon for new, and it will add a new row. And here you can provide the details of the structure name. For example, KCB, or let me call it Kenya Commercial Bank. Kenya Commercial. Okay. If you tap, the same information will be pushed to the title. Okay. But before then, it's very much important for the purpose of naming, and like we said, the naming configuration is important. Oracle advises that to avoid confusion, it's good to put some underscore instead of putting space in between, so that it can have a continuous connection between the characters. Because the moment you happen to put a space, it will end up becoming something different. Or some space might be more than one character. For instance, it could be two spaces, or two kind of two spaces of two characters. So those can be avoided by putting some underscore in between, so that you don't create any space in between. Then you tap. Once you tap, the same information should go to the title field, but I have to copy because already we had tapped. And also you can give the structure description or structure name description. Okay, it could be Kenya Commercial. Paste this. This one you don't have to keep space, I mean to put a hyphen. Commercial bank, Flex. You can call it Flex. You can call it accounting Flexfield, anything. And then with that, you go ahead and save. Once you have saved, this field of code get grayed out. You cannot create anything. You cannot make any change on it. Even if you go to Oracle themselves, they cannot change this one for you. So you have to be very keen on when you are defining this, so that you can be able to provide or save them most important information. So, is there any question? Once you have been able to create the structure name, for instance, this is our structure name. Let me copy it somewhere and paste it here. Now you can go ahead to segments. You click on segments. Here you can start with the first segment all the way to the last one. And what I was talking about is the segment, number of segments, and that's what in this field you have the column. I want you to see on a very high level. I'm not creating segment today. I was only wanted to show you the level of organization structure. Then from tomorrow we'll start building as if we are implementing. Tomorrow we'll start building as if we are implementing. Instead of discussing halfway, then we start again afresh implementing. I'll try to make sure that you can be able to understand each and every level of stage that we'll be setting up, so that even on your end you can start practicing. So these are the segments, how we can be able to select or to assign. The segments goes up to 30 is the highest number. If you can go through them, the way we have been able to log in and click on segment, you will not get more than 31. Okay, you get the first one, then up to the level of 30. But we said we can have a minimum of 2, and for best practice, and a maximum of probably 9. That's where we assign the segment, column to give it the characteristics of the number of segment. If, for instance, we want to have segment 1 to be the company segment, we will not assign it to column 9 or column segment number 3. We'll have to give it segment number 1. With that order, we will be able to have created something that will look like this. Okay, so that even when we are doing the count combination, this one, we will be selecting from the first segment because it was assigned segment number 1 versus and then you go to the second segment, third, and so on and so forth. So that is very important to understand, so that you can be able to know why do we have this kind of count combination selection in the order that we usually have. You can't find company here down, or you find the line of business here down. No. It's not possible. So in most cases, you'll find a company is starting, then probably region, then cost centers, then accounts. So basically, that's what we can be able to look at it today. I don't know whether you have question. because from here I don't want us to continue discussing because I may get you lost. But from tomorrow I want us to have a standard way of following the way we can implement, how we will build the responsibilities. We'll be able to have the user. We'll be able to create calendar. We'll be able to create period types. We'll be able to see how we can enable the currency. What else? And then we'll go to creation of the chart of accounts. After creation of the chart of accounts, we'll go straight to the primary ledger because we can only have the primary ledger when we have the 4 C's. That is the currency, calendar, chart of accounts, and the accounting method. Once that one is done, we will be able now to have other small setups so that we can be able to achieve a certain functionality. But the bigger picture is to have the calendar, chart of accounts, currency, and we select the accounting method so that we can create the primary ledger. Is there any question?
None from my side.
Okay, if there's no question, allow me to go up to that level. We will catch up tomorrow. Bye-bye and have a good night.